if your playing on the harmonium feels stiff and awkward sometimes, then these 5 tips will completely change your sound and change your experience of playing the harmonium. And this particular point, how to have a fluid playing style, is something we all struggle with in the beginning, and I hope that through the course of this video I can bring a little bit of clarity into what you can do to avoid breaks, to avoid clutter, and focus on the flow of things. So we're gonna go from this Rama Bolo, Rama Bolo Ram, Rama Bolo, to this Rama Bolo, Bolo Bolo Ram, Rama Bolo, Rama Bolo, Bolo Bolo Ram. So the reason why this happens to each and every one of us is that when we begin to learn chords, we learn them like this. And what we focus on here, it's not the theory of the music, but it's the visual aspect of this. So there's one note, then there's the second note and the third note, and how many white keys are in between that. So most beginners that I have met and taught so far, they assume that this is a chord, and then this is a chord, and then this is a chord, and this is a chord. And of course, these are all chords, but these are not all the same chords. So where this is a C major chord, major being defined by its uplifting quality, then when we move this up, this is a D minor chord by its melancholic depth. So these are very, very different chords, but it's the same visual aspect to it. And that's not to say that this visual aspect of looking at the chords in the beginning has no place, because it definitely does. But it keeps us from finding better ways to playing those chords in the beginning. And I'm going to show you how to avoid that in this video. The problem is that when we go from a C major to a G major, and we want to keep that same pattern, that same visual pattern of the G being here, and then 2 white keys in the middle, and that's a big jump. And we cannot do that jump without lifting our fingers, but we don't want to lift our fingers. And that brings me to the first tip, the first point, and that is finding the right inversions. See, this is not the only way to play G, but these 3 notes, this is the G, the B, and the D, right? These 3 notes define what notes are part of G major. So I can use these notes anywhere on the keyboard. So in fact, right now I'm going to move this D and play it down here, and I'm going to move this B and play it down here. So now this is my B, okay? And of course, I'm going to play with my right hand only. And now playing this G major inversion like this gives me the option to smoothly change from C to G like this, okay? So inversions, that's something that we want to learn, or rather we just don't want to be confused if somebody tells us there's different ways of playing the same chord. So right now I would tell you in the beginning there's 3 ways to play your chord. In the example of C major, you can play with C, E, G, or you can play E, G, C, or you can play G, C, E, right? Because you know that C, E, and G are the notes, and now you can bring them anywhere. You could also replace that C to being there. You could replace that G to being there. This is still as C major as it gets. So that allows us to now use this visual chord pattern and know that, okay, this is my G major, so I know these are the notes that I can use, and I can move them around the keyboard anywhere. And so I'm just going to find the closest inversion to where I'm already at. Now with the chant Rama Bolo that I used before, we are going from C major to G major. So that means from here I want to find the closest inversion to G major so that my fingers can flow effortlessly. And that brings me to our second tip, which is finger positioning. So if I was to play every chords like this with my fingers 1, 2, and 3, then I am in a more awkward position when I want to move to my G major like this, right? Because I don't want to lift fingers. I always want fingers to be played on the keyboard when I play. If I don't, there's a break, but I don't want a break. I want a smooth way of playing. So I want to try to place my fingers cleverly so that I have, right now, I'm playing with my finger 1, 3, 5. Okay, I'm giving numbers to these fingers and I'm playing 1, 3, 5. And that's my basic way of placing my fingers on the keyboard when I play a chord. Because this gives me the most options of finding a good next chord because I have these 2 fingers free, and the chances are good that I can find an inversion that uses either this one or that one for the next chord. So for my next chord here, G major, I know, okay, I want to go to the D. So I don't have a finger, I don't have a 6th finger here that could reach out to the B. I will place down this D while I release the C major. So to facilitate this change, I have my index finger free here, and then I can, while I release my C and E, I can press my D down, and then I can play the B down there. And this is my G major inversion. And that's only possible. So now you see I'm playing my fingers 1, 2, and 5. So now I have my finger 3 open again to change back to the C. And that's why we don't do this, but we do this. And in the beginning, it can be very demanding to include your little finger in this, but it's worth getting into it now. Because eventually you will need it. You will need it for all kinds of things, for chord playing, for melody scale playing. So it just frees up so much possibilities when we include the small finger into our chords, and we can use all 5 fingers of, come on, we're only using one hand on the harmonium, so we can exploit what we have. And that brings us to our 3rd tip, which I call crawling. I have never heard anyone other use that term, but I think it describes very well what we're trying to do. So we can try to be clever and smart about our finger positioning all day, but at some point we are just going to find ourselves in an awkward position. So let's say I'm playing my C like this, and now I want to go down to that G major inversion, but I have no free fingers. So while I hold down the C, I'm going to use these 2 fingers and I'm going to put them down one by one to free up my fingers so that I can then move into the next position. Okay? So the keys stay down and I'm slowly, one by one, exchanging the fingers that are pressing down the keys. And this I call crawling, and this works for all kinds of keys. That brings us to tip number 4, which is timing. Let's call it micro timing because we assume that we know when to change the chord. But actually on the harmonium, what we often want to do is play the chord just before we want to hear the chord, because it takes some time for the air to travel through the instrument to the metal tongues that generate the note and for the sound to hit our ears. So we always want to change a little bit before the time where we need to play the chord. So let's say we hold a chord for 4 beats. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, change, 2, 3, 4. On a guitar, we would just change at the same time, or a piano, we would just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the harmonium, we need to be a little earlier than this. So let's say we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So you saw me changing just before the 1. 3, 4, and 1, 2, 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 3, 4, and 1. So I'm always just a little microsecond before. And a little bonus tip here, we don't press all the notes at the same time because we just press whatever we have available to us. So when I want to go from this to the F, I can easily just play a part of the F and then slowly follow the rest of my fingers to complete the chord. Just a bonus there. That brings us to our last tip, which is tip number 5, Bellow Technique. You have been seeing and hearing me do this all along, and this is something by now it's automatic. But what I am doing, I am using this bellow to pump air into the instrument so that sound can flow. And this works just like the human body, just like a breath. If you have to do a lot of sound and it needs to come right now, then you need a lot of breath and a lot of air. So I'm taking a deep inhale and a deep exhale. So I'm taking a deep inhale. And if I want the air to escape slowly, I press 1. My mouth would do ooh. To allow more air to flow through the instruments, I open the mouth a little more music coming through the instrument. When I do a ha, 3 notes on the piano, a lot of air is flowing through the instrument. And I lose a lot of air. Now what you just witnessed, or maybe you didn't, but it was there, was me making up for the loss of air that I experienced while opening my mouth, e.g. while pressing more keys. So when I press down more keys, more air will exit the instrument and I need more air. That means I blow a lot more. So when I only press 2 chords, it's a lot easier for me to have a stable note. I don't need to work so hard. But when I do more, I need to blow a little more frequent. Now when I do a chord change, I need to gain a little air. So that's basically a deep inhale. And then I'm stable again. So when I do a new chord, I need to make sure that I have enough air coming in. That means just before I play the new chord, I make sure I go out and then I go in again. And you see me working out and in. And that's not the case with all harmoniums. Some harmoniums have a strong enough spring sitting inside that pushes the bellow out, but I don't. So I do out and in and out and in. And that gives me a lot of control. So before I change the chord, I do pump, 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 just to give it an extra, because there's air traveling all the way from in here up to under these keys, and then it all needs to happen, and it all needs to happen in the timing that I want it to happen in, because I'm changing the chord, so I need to help along. And some harmoniums are set up really well and it just flows and it's just easy, and it's easy to play quietly and it's easy to play loudly and very dynamic. And some you just really need to master how to work the bellow, and that will come in time. It's something that in time will just come automatically. So I hope that brought some flow into your life, and if you want to keep learning, then you should check out this video right there and hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.